Hi, I'm Peggy Hicks. I'm the Director of Thematic Engagement, Special Procedures, and Right to Development at the UN Human Rights Office in Geneva. Our office is working on a concept called human rights economy that looks at how we make sure that our economy delivers for people rather than people looking at how they deliver for the economy. The idea here is that for a long time, the way that economic policy has been being made hasn't really put people at the center of the equation. And there's a lot more that can be done to look at how our budgets are being made so that they really do what we call ring fencing. They make sure there's enough money to support the things that people need in terms of social protection and health. And we can find space within budgets to do these things if we approach it in the right way. These are actually legal obligations to economics and social rights, but the way economic policy is often being made hasn't really brought that in. We also need to address some of the structural inequalities that underlie some of economic policy and decision making, and we need to make sure that people have these tools, these human rights tools, that will allow us to do all of this more effectively. When we look at the international financial architecture, I think it's fair to say that human rights isn't really seen as a central part of what's being talked about. What we want to see is that when finance ministers get together to talk about the issues that they face, they are thinking in a framing that looks at what are the impacts of the decisions they're taking on people and on their rights. And what that means as a game changer going forward is that in the policies that are within these institutions, there are ways to more effectively integrate human rights into how they look at conditionalities, what are the loan processes, and all the different other steps that they take. They should look at and do things like human rights due diligence and impact assessments that allow them to look at not just the financial side of the equation, but also the people-centered and human rights-centered side of the equation. The issue of debt is absolutely crucial. It is the case that as debt burdens increase, what we see happening is that countries are not going to be able to meet that debt. They already can't. And what happens is that the impact on people, of course, is extreme. What we want to see happen is a different conversation, a multilateral, multi-country initiative that will really look at how we make sustainable progress on debt relief. Now is the moment. It's absolutely urgent, and it really is impossible to imagine the impacts that people will feel if this doesn't happen. It's already, as I said, really being felt within a variety of countries, given the levels of debt, and we see a crisis not already looming, but here that has to be addressed. Yeah, there's so much that can be done on the taxation front that would really make a difference. Obviously, what we're looking for is an approach to taxation that really, again, recognizes and looks at the obligations and responsibilities of everybody to pull their fair share. So we're not asking for people to do more than what they should. We're asking for equity in a way that makes it so that those who really do owe start paying. And that means putting in place structures where, corporations are going to pay a certain amount in all countries, in all contexts. We'd like to see a minimal level of corporate taxation so that there isn't a race to the bottom, everybody trying to tax companies the least, which ends up making nobody have to pay what they really ought to. And we need much more transparency and accountability around what's currently happening. So a lot more information needs to be available about the current situation. And once we know more, we really need to take action based on what we learn to make sure that there is more fairness and equity in the way tax policy works. Ultimately, we want tax policy that's progressive rather than regressive, and that really moves forward and helps us achieve the 2030 agenda rather than stands in the way, which is where we currently are. We've seen a lot of action here in Geneva looking at how the human rights agenda is put forward and how it will serve the 2030 agenda. And there's a very vibrant conversation here about what needs to be done on that front. And part of what our office has done is expanded, for example, the number of macroeconomists that we work with. And what we found is there's a huge appetite, both with governments, where we're helping them with budget analysis and looking at how they can better deliver on the things that we're talking about within a human rights economy, but also within UN country teams, where they want to be able to bring this into their programming and approaches across the work that they do. So the resolutions that we have actually said, not only is this important, but we need to put more resources behind it. And we're very thankful that that approach is being taken. One of the things we really want to bring into this is that this is really a crucial moment. We're in this post-COVID environment where there's a real understanding that these are issues that need to be taken up and addressed. And we're very fortunate this year to have the Summit of the Future coming. And what we'd like to see happen is that these issues around how are we integrating human rights into economic policy and development policy are part of it, because we're 100% convinced that if we do that, we'll be able to deliver better. Human rights aren't burdens or hoops you have to jump through. They're tools that can be used to deliver more sustainable development and help us meet the 2030 agenda. And it's something that we can all help with. We should really all work together, and that means everybody in New York and in Geneva, all the economists coming together with the social scientists, coming together with the human rights advocates and civil society, and of course our partners in the private sector, working together to help governments and all of us achieve what we need to in the 2030 agenda.